Hello, I'm Breena Clarke. Welcome to 4 O'Clock Flowers. This podcast is produced for the Hobart Book Village Festival of Women Writers, an annual 3-day celebration held in the town of Hobart, New York, the Book Village of the Catskills.
This poem is entitled Dendrology, and dendrology means the study of trees. The summer of '77, I learned the Spanish phrase, pelo malo, when my aunt announced I'd never be loved by a white man, con ese pelo malo. I loved my hair, the way it frizzed around the edges of my face and stood there like a woman waiting to be asked to dance a slow bolero, a jumping rumba. I was 3 years old, didn't know much of love then. The orange tree that stood in my aunt's yard became my first lover. I would wrestle with its tender branches, hoist my small frame around its tubby brown trunk, thick as a liana or a man's waist. I wonder now if every lover in my bed in some ways is a representation of that orange tree and those words I heard in that Miami heat about the way love can be so damn fickle that the texture of my hair would wilt a pink-crotched man, make him recoil from my locks. Today, I still do have a fondness for trees, all of them, with their deep roots and their heartwood, the alamedas holding rows of them singing, shading my unruly hair, reminding me that once I was told there would never be an arboretum in my future, that I'd never have the gift of choices. Bonsai, white birch, redwood.
Welcome, Yesenia Montilla.
Thank you.
That is a beautiful, beautiful poem. And I'm so pleased that you're joining me for a chat today. And we are so pleased that you'll be a participating author at Hobart Book Village Festival of Women Writers 2016.
I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you so much, Breena. It's good to be talking to you.
It's our pleasure. Yesenia Montilla is a New York City poet with Afro-Caribbean roots. She is a 2014 Canto Mundo Fellow. Her poetry has appeared in the chapbook For the Crowns of Your Head, as well as the literary journals 5 a.m., Adana, Wide Shore, and others. Her first collection of poetry, The Pink Box, was published by Willow Books in fall 2015. Yesenia, now let's talk about The Pink Box.
Okay.
Firstly, I'd like to say that I think it has a beautiful and absolutely compelling cover. And of course, there are just beautiful and compelling poems within.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit more about this work.
So during my MFA and even before that, I was thinking a lot about my place in the world as an Afro-Latina, and what that meant, really, really what it meant to sort of be responsible for a whole culture and the expectations that come along with it, specifically around like sexuality and children. So most of my poems deal with that. I wanted to create a collection that did talk about me as a child and me in my favorite setting, which is New York City, and sort of introduced me to the poetry world. But I also wanted to create a collection that talked about really important issues that I grapple with, and I know I'm not the only woman that's grappling with it. Like, what happens when you say, I don't want children? What happens when you date outside of your race in an environment in which your family seems to hate themselves just because of years and years and years of colonialism and racism. So I wanted to tackle all those subjects, and I know it's so much, but I didn't want to hold back. I wanted to make sure that I like showed the world like who I am, where I come from, and what I believe in.
Right. Now, I know that you self-identify as Afro-Latina or Afro-Caribbean. Will you speak about your views on this important self-identification and the influence on your work?
Yeah, my dad is from the Dominican Republic and my mom is from Cuba. They both emigrated here when they were in their early teens, probably preteen. And so there's a lot of race involved in their growing up. My mom is a white passing Latina, and my dad is a Black man. So they came together, and it was hard to be together as people here in the United States that A, didn't know the language, B, were from two different cultures, C, had two different types of color backgrounds, right? But also like the culture on my dad's side and the culture on my mom's side sort of clashed in terms of their ideas on race. While Cuba and where my mom had come from was really progressive, my dad's side, they were afraid to say, I'm a Black person walking this earth. So I decided that I was taking on the Afro-Latina title because it was really important to me to say the only difference between us, dad, us, grandma, and anyone else we see here in the United States that you call African American is that our ancestors got off the boat earlier. And so that was really like my huge intention, is to tell people that I wasn't going to look away from the historical ideas of race in the Dominican Republic or in Cuba.
Right. Well, that, that's very fascinating, and it's a theme and a pursuit that's very close to my heart as well. Now, I'm also, in reading about you, I was intrigued that you began your creative writing with a view toward writing a novel, and then later shifted your focus to poetry. Okay. That's an intriguing idea. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, I used to like cut school. I used to cut class in high school and go read the books that I wanted to read or where I found myself. And those were like Julia Alvarez, Julia Alvarez and Allende, those books were like really dear to me. Toni Morrison, really dear to me. And a lot of those books were not being taught in school when I was going to school, when I was growing up. Now they are, but they weren't before. And so I wanted to write those types of books. Yes. And when I decided to go to school, I thought, I'm going to be a novelist. I'm going to write the great American novel, but it's going to be with people that look like me and that talk like me and that love what I love. But unfortunately, I was working full time and I couldn't get into a novel writing class because they would get filled up so quickly. Yes. So instead, one semester, I decided to take a poetry class, and I took the class with Tina Chang, the Brooklyn Poet Laureate right now. And she blew my brain wide open because I didn't realize with poetry that you could do so much in so little space. And that was like the puzzle for me. So I fell in love with that process and I never looked back.
Yes. I was reading a poem of yours, and it sounds like a small novel, and I was really affected, and that was the poem, The Day I Realized We Were Black. It's a beautiful poem that builds with suspense, and it's very lovely. And I can see that narrative impulse in you. You're not describing a flower or the mountains. You're really engaging with those visceral emotions and in that story. It was just a beautiful poem.
Thank you. That was a hard poem to write too.
I guess so. I mean, it was painful to read certain portions of it for me.
Yeah.
Now, I was further intrigued about the substance of the workshop that you'll be presenting at Festival of Women Writers 2016. It's called Duende's Shadow Over the Revolution, though you have that the parentheses around R, so I also read evolution there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what is Duende and what will your workshop be like?
That's cute. Like I've been searching for duende like my whole writing career.
Mm-hmm.
Federico Garcia Lorca, Spanish poet, wrote back in like the 1920s a theory and play of duende in which he described this entity that takes over the artist and allows them to create the type of art that really is felt deeply, deeply by the audience. And he particularly talked about flamenco singers as having this, or as spoken word poets, having this sort of tap into the duende. He doesn't necessarily describe duende, so that's why it's so elusive. But I took a class with the poet John Murillo a while back in which he showed us two different video clips. One of, it was an opera singer singing Summertime.
Yes.
And then it was a version that Janis Joplin did. And like the pain in the second one was so felt, like you felt it in your body, like you got goosebumps. And both versions were really, really, really beautiful, but you felt them differently, even though they were the exact same art being presented.
Yes.
And so that's how he tries to like grasp it. And that's the way I try to grasp it too. That it is a relationship that occurs between the artist and its audience that transforms both the artist and the audience. So I think about Duende a lot when it comes to the evolution, and I say revolution, but also the evolution of any marginalized people. And thinking about like our ancestral traumas and such. Yeah. So the workshop that I'm giving for Hope Art is going to be a generative workshop. So I'm hoping people come ready to write a lot because I have a lot of prompts for them. And a lot of handouts too, a lot of homework to take with them.
Yeah, good.
But it's definitely going to be looking at the ways in which through our own revolutions, right? The things that we battle every single day, and our revolutions in terms of what our parents and our grandparents battled, and seeing how that evolves, but being able to present it in a way that has some type of duende, that creates a connection between the artist in that room and who their audience will be once they leave the room.
Right. Well, that's fascinating, and I hope I have the opportunity to sit in and listen to your workshop because I can see a lot of ways that it would relate even to my own work. Well, many thanks, Yesenia.
Thank you, Breena.
For joining me.
Lovely.
And I appreciate your generosity in sitting down for a little chat. And I'm looking forward to your workshop and to your reading as well. You'll, of course, be reading from the Pink Box at the festival. Yeah. So for more information about the festival, go to HobartFestivalOfWomenWriters.com, listeners, and you can also look for us on Facebook. Thanks for lingering. You've been listening to 4 O'Clock Flowers, a podcast produced for the Hobart Book Village Festival of Women Writers. Join us for Festival 2016 on September 9th, 10th, and 11th. Thank you.